question of money is once again hanging over the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority, the agency in charge of Boston's Big Dig. Massachusetts lawmakers want to know why utility workers on the Central Artery project were paid millions of dollars in overtime. NECN's Shannon Ogden reports.
In 2003, the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority paid Big Dig workers $11 million in overtime, nearly double what it paid in overtime in each of the 4 previous years. One electrician last year earned $288,500.
The amounts of overtime are just mind-boggling.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you the number of resumes I've gotten in the last 4 weeks for people that want to be electricians on the Turnpike.
Turnpike Authority Chairman Matt Amarello says the excessive overtime was a one-year-only situation, required to accomplish 3 Big Dig milestones: I-90, 93 North, and 93 southbound tunnels. Amarello also says it was more cost-effective to use existing workers for the extra hours instead of hiring and training additional employees. And the overtime did not put the Big Dig over budget.
Had the roadway openings been delayed, it would have cost the public $10 million per month in additional costs to the project's bottom line.
The existing workers who put in that overtime are union workers with very lucrative contracts. For example, Big Dig electricians are represented by IBEW. Under their contract, every hour worked over 8 hours is time and a half. But if an electrician puts in 8 hours or more of overtime, then all hours worked the entire day are time and a half, a contract negotiated before Amarello took the reins. Turnpike adds that even though workers did put in very long days, the long days were never in violation of safety regulations.
In 2002, if I sat before any committee of the legislature and told them that I would have 3 milestone openings in '03, they would have laughed me out of the room. But we did it, and we did it because we took these extraordinary steps using Turnpike personnel and staff to take on some of these added responsibilities.
Governor Mitt Romney and several lawmakers are pushing for the independent Turnpike Authority to be brought under control of the governor's office, a move the committee's co-chairs favor.
I think there's a management problem relative to the lack of internal controls going to monitoring overtime.
Shannon Ogden, NECN.
We take a closer look at the Turnpike story now with 2 guests. Christy Myhouse is a member of the Turnpike Authority Board. Representative Paul Donato is on the Legislative Transportation Committee. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
You represent the checks and balances. You're on the board. You're on the Legislative Committee that has oversight. Why is this allowed to happen?
Well, that's the question that we asked at the Transportation Committee hearing. We weren't aware of this until it hit the newspapers, and the first thing that we did was, ask the chairman of the transportation of the Turnpike Authority to come to, sure, Madam Amarello, to come to us and tell us what was going on. For 3 years to 5 years, the overtime cost had been $6 million a year, consistent.
It doubled in this 1 year.
Doubled in this 1 year. And what happened?
You're on the board. Why aren't you stopping it?
I'm on a board that doesn't meet. I'm on a board that doesn't work. I'm on a board that's out of control. I'm on a board that's supposed to meet statutorily twice each month. Today's June 30th. We haven't met in the month of June.
Well, you're not a poor guy. Why don't you hire a lawyer and go sue the... I'm serious. Sue the Turnpike. I thought you were fired once. You did hire a lawyer.
Right.
The SJC put you back in that position. Are they violating the law?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is what the representative gets, and I commend him for getting this, representative. This is what I get as a Turnpike board member in the age of Enron, in full disclosure.
Blank.
Nothing.
Page blank.
Absolutely nothing. And I've been asking for this for months.
What happens, Christy, when you call Matt Amarello, the head of the Turnpike Authority, and you ask him these questions?
The only thing that happens is the last time, well, let's put it this way. The last time Matt Amarello returned my phone call was July of 2002.
2 years ago?
Absolutely.
Doesn't he work for you?
Yes.
And he hasn't returned your call in 2 years?
Absolutely.
Let's get back to you for a second. The argument about this overtime, critics say, many newspaper editorials say, this is hack heaven. I know you hate that expression in the legislature. You have a colleague, for example, on the Transportation Committee, Anthony Petroselli. His father is one of the electricians making $288,000 on $65,000 in base pay. The conventional wisdom is the members of the legislature don't want this to go away because it's their friends who are getting all the dough. Is that a fair?
No, that's not. No, that's not true. The members of the Transportation Committee and the 2 co-chairs were outraged. Were outraged at the cost of overtime, and their concern was, as Christy said, the concern here was that no one knew anything about it until it exploded in the newspaper.
But now that you know something about it, is there anything that either the legislature or the board, even if it's not meeting, is there anything anybody can do to rein this in, Christy Myhouse?
Absolutely.
What is it?
Adopt Governor Romney's reform package. And let me just say this to the representative, because I know his heart's in the right place. In 1998, before we had fast lane, we had 615 toll takers. Today, with over 60% of all turnpike transactions being fast lane transactions, untouched by human hands, we have, according to the Globe, 586 toll takers. Something is wrong. There's absolutely no oversight. And all of this overtime, that policy for managers and supervisors being changed, that was done by Matt Amorello.
Christy Myhouse is not the only one who thinks that this overtime thing is the perfect case being made for a reform proposal by the governor, mainly to merge the Turnpike Authority into the Highway Department. He says it would save $190 million one time, $23 million a year, but both co-chairs of your committee in the House and the Senate say it's phony reform. How's it phony?
Well, it's phony in the sense that, first of all, the $190 million is a one-time transfer.
Still $190 million.
We were able to solve the budgetary problem this year without taking the $190 million. There's $190 million that's in the debt service account. That money is sitting there, and that money is sitting there and gaining us $10 million a year in interest.
But Paul, even if you have the money now, and obviously revenues are picked up, doesn't the argument, when the argument's made about duplication of responsibility, two administrations, two sets of workers doing similar sorts of things, as a common sense thing, doesn't it say to you there should be some consolidation here?
Absolutely, and what we're saying is that we want to review, that we're looking at it in the Transportation Committee saying we want to review what would be the best management practices for both the departments. We realize that there may have to be some consolidations, but when the governor is indicating through his A&F department that
Administration and Finance, his fiscal arm.
Right, that there's a $20 million to $23 million savings, we're asking the question, I can ask the question to Christie, show me where the $23 million savings is, because the Mass Taxpayers Foundation is saying that's an erroneous figure.
How about that? Is the $23 million a fiction?
It is a fiction to me because it's much higher than that. We're an agency that's bloated, out of control, spending beyond our means, and in the end, these costs are going to come back to you as the caretaker of the taxpayers. I deal with the toll payers each and every day, and I try to offer free transponders, which would have been absolute wonderful for both the turnpike and people using the road.
These are the things, for those who don't know, these are the things that allow you, a little box allows you to use fast lane.
Taking tolls one way instead of two ways, and selling the service area plazas, paying off all the bonds, and taking down those foolish, dangerous, environmentally unsensitive tolls. And you know what each one got? Nothing. Goose egg. We never give anything back to our customer. No direct toll relief, nothing.
You know how frustrating this has got to be for a viewer? Here we have a board member who says, I essentially have no power because I've been eviscerated. I've been emasculated by essentially the executive director, who, by the way, is appointed, Matt Amorello,
Yes.
and we'll give him a chance to respond to at an appropriate time. You guys have the power to implement Romney's reform, to not implement its reform, to do a middle position, yet nothing, at least now, except talk is being done. How frustrated does the average voter have to be?
The voter is frustrated, and so are the members of the Transportation Committee, because when we find out that overtime has doubled in 1 year, and we don't get that information, Christie's not getting the information, he doesn't find out about it until the last minute, we find out about it through the newspaper articles. When the governor wants the Transportation Committee in his reform package to have the taxpayers of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts pick up $2.5 billion in debt, then we say to ourselves, wait a minute, how is that going to affect the ratepayers or the toll payers who are going on the turnpike?
I'll tell you how it's going to affect them. They're paying $5 million more a year in overtime. You said it yourself, and they've been paying each of the last 4 years.
That's
and
the
nothing's
tip of the
being
iceberg.
Done.
That is the tip
the rest
of the iceberg.
What's the rest of the iceberg?
I don't know what does it count in state police overtime? A huge sector. That contract hasn't been negotiated since 1974.
Well, what Matt Amorello said, and you just saw this in the report with Shannon Ogden, is one of the reasons why all this overtime goes to current employees and why the numbers are as high as they are is because the contracts that have been negotiated with the Turnpike Authority say that senior employees must have the first right to overtime. Is that the case?
That is the case.
So what choice does Amorello have except to implement what the contract says?
There's a contract up now. Negotiate it the right way. Why is it that we have basically the same amount of toll takers back in 1998 as we have today? This is the tip of the iceberg, Jim.
Paul, we only have a couple of seconds here. Can you say unequivocally that we won't be sitting here 12 months from now talking about an electrician that made $288,000 this past year on the Turnpike Authority?
I don't think anyone could say that unequivocally, but I can say this, that the members of the Transportation Committee will never allow anyone to make that kind of money in overtime. Otherwise, there will be changes at the.
So it's not going to happen again next year?
I don't think so.
And there's going to be some consolidation in the next year?
There's going to. The Transportation Committee is reviewing all kinds of aspects.
Is the answer yes?
The answer is we're reviewing everything.
That's what I figured. Okay, speaking of unequivocal, we only have a minute left. We got to talk to you alone for a moment. Brian McGrory in the Boston Globe wrote a piece recently saying the perfect Republican Senate candidate, should John Kerry become president of the United States, is a guy that started a little grocery and now is loaded, public-spirited, all this sort of things, much like you. And he said Christy Myhouse was the perfect candidate. Are you a candidate for the U.S. Senate if it turns out John Kerry is elected president?
And which vacancy is that?
No, I'm serious. Are you a candidate for the...
And I answered, Brian.
You, in fact, said what your platform was going to be. You said opposing all special interests. So I assume you are a candidate, yes?
Well, no, I'm not. I'm on the Bush re-election team. I have up until today, I had a bumper sticker on my car. Someone took it off, basically.
Probably Matt Amarello snuck around in the middle of the night.
Actually, I was asked, the question was, is your party again going to run no candidate in 2000 and no candidate in 2002? So
you're not going to answer my question, is that?
Yeah, if it's out there, I will. My sense is I'm too independent to do it.
But you might.
I might.
Very quick, we only have 20 seconds left. You spent $80,000 to convince Mitt Romney with a poll and other things he should run against the sitting governor, Jane Swift. Now, Mitt Romney is rumored to be replacing you on the Turnpike Authority board with Dan Grabowskis. Is that true, and is it happening?
I'm not worried.
Meaning it's not going to happen?
I talked to the governor in April. I'm absolutely not worried.
But at least he returns your phone calls, unlike Matt Amarello.
He does return my phone calls.
Thanks so much to Christy Myhouse and Paul Donato. Former Al Gore campaign manager Donna Brazile weighs in on her former boss, John Kerry, and Cooking with Grease. Stay tuned. More